Previously on Beware the Q, we looked at a haunting new work by Justin Curry, a mysterious artist who has been kind enough to send over his original illustrations to be shown exclusively on this channel. The work in question was that of a ruin haunter gravital transformation and depicted the process in which these future humans, guided by their delusional ideas of being the Star People's chosen ones, together with their sun's rapid expansion, had begun to implant their brains into machines. We saw the use of spider-like nanobots and the removal of the brain and eyes, quite a gruesome picture, I'm sure you would agree. And today, dear viewer, I have yet more to show you, so sit back, grab a snack and relax. It's time for the latest installment in Justin Curry's exciting new series, All Tomorrow's Revelations. But first, I would just like to thank you for all of your continued support. I don't really say it often enough, but I do really appreciate you all being here and taking an interest in what I do. Frankly, the channel wouldn't be where it is now without you, so thank you very much for joining me. If you want to support me further, then please consider becoming a patron. The link is in the description. Now with all of that out of the way, let's get started. The first of today's new illustrations depicts a blind folk. Not the primitive form that we saw in the original All Tomorrows, however. In this timeline, the blind folk managed to survive long enough to regain their sapience. The colouring of this illustration is interesting. It can be assumed that this scene takes place underground, and so what we are seeing here has been captured through night vision. The blind folk here looks ready for action. He is decked out in tactical gear. His helmet seems to possess a visor, meaning that these advanced forms of the blind folk have found a way, through technology, of achieving the ability to see. This could mean that they have since lost the use of their long whiskers, initially used for feeling around their environments. As can be seen here, the whiskers of this individual have been tied together and now resemble a very long moustache. He is hiding behind a rock, and behind that rock is what is, unmistakably, a gravital. It looks as though this blind folk is readying himself for combat. The description provided with the illustration goes as follows. History had assumed that the blind folk had met an early demise as the continent-sized shelters were completely in pieces underneath the surface, and so archaeologist Nemo Ramjet would leave this planet writing what he thought would be his final notes on this world. But then, around 4 Earth years after Nemo's initial investigation, a mysterious ship appeared over the planet and was found lifeless, floating through space. Nemo would return to the home of the blind folk and make a shocking discovery. After millions of years, the ship seemed to malfunction and its power supply had finally given out. No one was inside, but the discoveries made within this ship would rewrite the history of these people's lives. It would turn out that the records were completely wrong. It was assumed that the blind folk had perished, but what had actually transpired was that these blind future humans had dug deeper than ever imagined. Using technology to survey the core of this world, Nemo found that the blind folk initially feared the stars, and after learning the fates of the star people of their homeworld, began to dig towards the warmth of the core of their planet. They would bring their shelters in pieces deep beneath the surface and rebuild an entire civilization in complete stealth, always fearing what dangers would come from the stars. Their walls were covered in minerals and glowing algae that they would convert to foods and materials. They had developed technologies that would allow them to bend light and blend in with their glowing surrounding environment, as they only saw hiding as a way to keep safe from any enemies. Their helmets would allow them to see anything and give back the eyes that they had learned were taken by the Q. No one would ever find them because of the depths they had reached. That was until the Gravital entered their system with genocidal intentions. As the blind folk were eventually brave enough to reach out to the stars, they did so in newly designed ships they had recently tested. They seemed to be similar to the Generation ships of old, but now with full cloaking abilities. The image on file was taken from the found ship and shows what took place in the assumed final moments of the blind folk. The Gravital, able to withstand any temperature and see almost anything, found access and breached the underground continents and hunted the blind folk down one by one. It was first assumed that they were wiped out by the Gravital, as no trace of them exists on the planet after this point in time, but signs have pointed to many of them fleeing in cloaked ships. The image of this blind folk, who temporarily decloaked in this image, is now considered to be one of the few blind folk who stayed behind to distract during the evacuations. So, as it would seem, we have no more records of anything more. It is now assumed they started again on another world, probably near its core, somewhere waiting to be found. A brave soul, staying behind to distract the machine menace while evacuations took place. An honourable death indeed. If this image doesn't make you loathe those hateful mechanical demons, then this next one surely will. Here we can see the second illustration sent over by Mr. Curry, and it depicts a tool breeder. This individual seems to be brandishing a weapon, most likely a genetically modified living being, as was the case with all tool breeder technology. He seems to be wearing a cephalopod-like creature as clothing. We can see along the top of the image that there are many Gravital surrounding this individual, meaning we are probably observing his final moments. Beneath them to the right, we can see a tool breeder underwater city, probably the one this tool breeder was defending. The accompanying description for the illustration goes as follows. Nemo Ramjet would explore the depths of many ocean-covered planets looking for the remains of the tool breeders' societies. As all living tool breeder technology had died, Nemo would have to use current genetic engineering to bring life back to the tool breeders' machinery long enough to remove specific files for studying. One of the only salvaged images pulled from Nemo's files depicts the moments of the Gravital invasion of the tool breeders' homeworld. The Gravital could reach extreme depths and seemed to have just breached the outer shells of the tool breeder cities. A tool breeder soldier can be seen laying down his arms as he is completely surrounded by Gravital. Shortly after these walls fell, the Gravital would leave orbit to commandeer an asteroid that would boil the seas, ending the tool breeder's existence in time. How sad. Two images provided by the artist, both of which depict their respective species' final moments. Maybe one day Mr. Curry will provide us with something a little more upbeat, but extinction is just as much a part of existence as life. All Tomorrow's Revelations promises to show us many different facets of the different species' lives, however. So what do you think of these illustrations? Leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to like the video, share it around, and subscribe to the channel to be notified of future uploads. I'd also like to say a big thank you to my current members and patrons: Ferric Basilio, Gerard Jones, Towley, Jamie Bonbon, Cryptic Chronicles, Andrew Schroeder, VANCE Vance, Wes Franklin, Disaster Nick, Marco.David, Michael Stevens, and Gabriella Ilikova. This has been Beware the Q, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.